Hello, this is an overview of a Siemens nuclear medicine workstation. Um, it's loaded with a program called MI Apps, which is highlighted up here. This program allows you to process and interpret and change nuclear medicine images, planar, dynamic, SPECT images. It's also loaded with a viewing tab and a filming tab. I'll just briefly explain. With the filming tab, you can load in different images. You can select different layouts. Once the layouts are selected that you want, you can select different printers. You can increase or decrease the number of copies you want. Increase, decrease brightness, and zoom, pan, rotate the images however you'd like, and then you can print them out from here. Very rarely are you going to see an institution that actually prints anything off anymore. So I'm not going to spend much time on this tab. Most all workstations will be loaded with a filming tab. I believe it comes standard on all of them. They also generally come standard with a viewing tab, which is a generic viewer that can be used to view anything from MRI, CT, planar X-ray images. This tab is great for overall viewing of nuclear medicine planar images, but is bad with SPECT and SPECT CT images because it can only load one study at a time. You can't load a CT and you can't and a nuclear and fuse them on top of one another. What you would need is an additional card down here, which this station does not have, called 3D. 3D is used on most of the SPECT CT scanners and most of the PET CT scanners for fusion. This is primarily, the viewing card is primarily used in the CT realm. Okay, we're focused primarily here on the MI Applications card, or tab, and in this tab, it's divided into three sections. This section over here is your category section. This section over here is your database section. And this section down here, this is going to be your active workflows. Um, so honestly, this bottom section, to get it out of the way, it's a very unnecessary tab for most technologists. It comes more in handy if you're a physician or resident, to be exact. Um, what you can do is you can load up a study. For example, if I was a resident, I could load up this thyroid. I could interpret the study. After I have my report generated, I could minimize out of the study, and then I could move on to the next patient. I could assess a renal scan. After I generate a report on the renal scan, I could minimize out of it. And what you can do is you can load up down here in this bottom section all the different studies that you have your reports generated on. And then when you have an attending sit down with you, you can double click on the patient and load that file back up. Now, if you double click on the file and the file is loaded, you have a couple options. You can minimize out of it, or you can suspend it. Suspending it kind of locks it in place so it can't accidentally be closed, and then the only way you can actually launch it again is if you hit the launch button. That's what Siemens recommends, but honestly it's almost easier just to double click on what you want and then use the minimize button to minimize out of it. But if you want, you can use the launch and suspend and complete buttons. So if it's red, it's suspended. If it's green, it's pending. So watch as I suspend. There we go. Took it a moment, sorry. As I suspended it, it also turned to red. So we have two studies that are suspended. If we want to actually view them, you can either double click on them or you can hit the launch button. Now, if you hit the complete button will actually close the study. It doesn't save anything, it just closes it out. Your other option, which is the same as hitting the complete button, you won't delete any data, so don't worry about that. Your other option is to actually just hit the X up here. It says all data that is not saved will be lost. You want to exit? Yes. What it means by that is if I zoom in on this study, if I move the study over, if I change the brightness, that's what's not going to be saved. The actual raw data will still be there. You cannot delete patients from the MI Applications program. It's impossible. In order to delete patients, you have to actually load up the patient browser, which will be another lesson. It's a separate program that runs independently from MI Apps viewing and filming. It's kind of just a totally different program that bridges all three of these together. So we'll worry about the patient browser later. Patient browser can be accessed, just for your own information, from the patient button or from clicking this button here. And if you ever have a question about anything, just hover your mouse over it and it'll tell you what each thing does. And down here, it's easy to figure out on your own. You can select different categories, different work statuses, stages, and workplaces to sort your studies that you have loaded up down here, if you have a bunch of them loaded. This little pie chart down here shows how much of the hard drive is available. I just deleted a whole bunch of data off of this station, so it's very empty right now. Okay, so that completes this section of the MI applications. We'll move on to the category section. The category section has local and network. If you select the local button, it will only allow you to see the categories of the different. It'll only allow you to see the programs basically that are installed on this computer. If you change it to network, it will allow you to see the programs that are installed on all the other eSofts that are linked together. This is eSoft 5 of 9, so there's 9 stations altogether that are communicating with one another. So I would have access to 8 other stations if I click the network button. Auto filter, I'm not going to worry about that. I'll just give you an explanation of what it does. If you check auto filter, what happens is, say I click HIDA, and the computer knows this is a HIDA scan because its study name was listed as a hepatobiliary. If autofilter was turned on, when I clicked this study, it would automatically take me to the cholecystic category. If I clicked on bone scan, it would automatically take me to the skeletal category. No one really likes using autofilter for the simple reason that not every time you click on the bone scan do you want to process it with the bone scan tools. Not every time that you click on a lung scan do you want to process it with that. The other things you may use are the display category or the processing activity category. Those can be used to pull up the study in a different manner or to actually process the study. So we have each category. We've got adrenal, cardiac, cerebral, cholecystic, and so on. Each one of these categories has different programs in it, and keep in mind programs can exist in more than one category. So we've selected the category skeletal, and it has all of these different tools that we can use to actually process a study. We'll go over those tools one by one as I teach you how to process bone scans and lung scans and so on. But that's how they're sorted. They're sorted using this category dropdown. And this refresh button is almost never going to be used. It's only used if you modify a program and then you need to refresh the list before you use that program again. So say I go in to make a bone scan display 6 statics standard when I load it instead of 4 statics. Well, that change isn't going to take effect after I make it until I hit the refresh button. Alright, so again, in recap, this section down here is primarily going to be used for residents. It just shows what areas are, what studies are active. This area, the only thing you're really going to use is selecting different categories to process, specific studies. This is where everything important happens. This is the database section. First off, system uptime, 52 minutes. It's been 52 minutes since the last restart. The computer will turn, that text up there will turn red when it passes 24 hours. Siemens recommends that the system be rebooted every 24 hours. To be totally honest, if you don't use the system for more than just processing a few studies every now and then, you can go a good week without any issues. The image space available, it's kind of redundant, but it tells you how many megabytes you have available. It also is reflected in this pie chart down here. Now, if you click the Show All button, it will open up the study name, the study date, and database to all so that you can see every single study that's on this computer. Currently, I'm only displaying studies that were taken within a specific range. So if I hit this drop down, you can sort and say only look at studies that have been taken in the past 2 days, only look at studies in the past 7 days, and so on. Or if you only want to look at studies that were taken from January to February, you could click range and then type in a custom range. Once you do that, you'll have to hit find. And then database, if you want to view the data on, say, eSoft 1, I could select eSoft 1 and then I could access that computer's database from this workstation. Okay. Um, Honestly, most people just select the study date to today and they hit the find button or the refresh button. They'll do the same thing. And then that's what they use. There's really no reason to get change databases. You're going to be primarily working on the database that you're on. Anyhow. Okay, so this refresh button is going to be used a lot. Every time a new image comes over, every time an image is manipulated, every time an image is processed, anything like that, you're going to have to hit the refresh button. So it takes it a few seconds once you actually hit it to refresh. This study, for example, has 5 images, 4 statics and 1 whole body bone scan. If I process this together and make one screen save to send to the PAC system, and I don't refresh it, that image will not actually show there. It'll just say 5 forever. But when you refresh, it will then change to 6 and the new thing will pop up. This links you to the patient browser. This button up here is to register patients. Registering patients is unnecessary on a workstation, only necessary on an acquisition terminal. So we're not actually going to use that button. That's for a patient comes in, you need to type in their name and information and then scan them. The patients have already been scanned, we're just manipulating their data on a workstation. This lists the patients. As you can see, it's depressed, and those are all the pictures. It's depressed and it lists all the patients. It's in a very small, compact way. Lists studies, and basically it replaces the date. See how it just changes it there? I mean, most people leave it on list studies because list patients doesn't display what type of studies they are. Unless you're on a really tiny monitor, that's the only time you would need to use this one. Okay, so you're going to really toggle between these two. Series is nice because if you want to process, say, just the stress images, you would need to highlight both of those images by holding the control or the shift button and then clicking on both of them. If you wanted to process just the stress images, it would be impossible from the list studies mode because currently we have all 3 of them highlighted. I don't want to highlight the rest. I only want to highlight the stress and the stress gated. So I click list series and it opens it up so I can see just the stress and the stress gated. The problem with leaving it on the list series mode is sometimes your work list gets too big and it's hard to maneuver. So that concludes the broad overview of the MI applications, viewing, filming, eSoft, Siemens workstation. I'll go more in depth on how to process, how to manipulate, and how to operate the browser at another time. Thank you very much.